May thy servant Camilla, who wears this crown, be filled by thine abundant grace and with all princely virtues.
Whispers, once brushed aside as mere gossip, have exploded into a full-blown royal catastrophe, sending shockwaves through every corridor of Buckingham Palace. A late-night confrontation, a broken trust, and a secret Camilla thought would stay buried have now surfaced with devastating force. This time, King Charles didn't look the other way. He acted. Titles revoked, privileges stripped, a public humiliation no one believed would ever happen. As the monarchy braces for fallout, one question rises above the scandal. What finally pushed the king to ban and disown Camilla forever? The silent execution. At midnight on July 4th, her palace life vanished silently. No headlines, no warnings. Every key, code, and access erased in one chilling, controlled sweep, as if she had been erased from existence entirely. Then came the early hours of July 5th, before the sun fully touched the roofs of London. Protection officers who once walked beside her suddenly had new assignments. Security staff were switched out like chess pieces. Her apartment, once guarded and private, was opened and cleared. Wardrobes emptied, papers removed, jewelry and personal items packed into plain boxes with no labels. Servants who had greeted her for years were instructed to step aside. There were no goodbyes. By evening on July 5th, a lone black Range Rover rolled up quietly, the kind that draws no attention but carries heavy meaning. She stepped in without a word. No escort, no convoy. Just one vehicle and one driver, heading toward Mill House in Wiltshire, her longtime private refuge. And when she arrived, the gates shut behind her with a final thud, a sound that felt like the end of an era. They didn't reopen. The next morning, July 6th, the entire country woke up to the truth. The Times placed the story boldly on the front page, not by accident, but because the palace wanted it there. Someone high up had pressed "Go." The headline was sharp, but the images were even sharper. Two photos, side by side, seared into the public imagination. Diana in 1986, glowing, wearing the iconic earrings, and Laura in 2025, smirking on a red carpet in those exact same earrings. It didn't just shock the nation, it ignited it. People didn't whisper about it, they shouted. Outrage flooded every corner of the internet. Within hours, #CheatingQueen rose to the top of global trends and stayed there for 11 straight days, breaking records. Public opinion flipped almost overnight. Camilla's approval rating didn't just drop, it crashed to a humiliating 21%. Meanwhile, Catherine's popularity skyrocketed to an unbelievable 85%, as if the nation had chosen its queen all over again. Then came the viral clip that defined the entire scandal. Someone edited a video of Diana laughing gracefully in those famous pearls, cutting it sharply, with Laura striking a bold red carpet pose in the same jewelry, nearly 4 decades later. The contrast was brutal, almost cruel, and the internet devoured it. The clip hit 42 million views within 24 hours, turning the situation from controversy into cultural shock. Behind the scenes, the fallout came fast and mercilessly. Camilla's children disappeared from public view, refusing interviews and stepping back from events. Her much-anticipated memoir, which had been months from release, was quietly cancelled by the publisher. Staff members who had served her for years filed for transfers like they were escaping a burning building. Everyone sensed the shift. Everyone wanted distance. Even her personal driver, the man who had driven her through countless official engagements, felt the change. Later, he confessed that the final drive to Wiltshire was the strangest moment of his career. She didn't say a single word the entire trip, didn't cough, didn't sigh, didn't even ask where they were. She simply stared out of the window, motionless, watching the world pass by like she no longer belonged to it. He said she looked less like a queen and more like a shadow, a quiet, fading figure who already understood that her place in the story had ended. And just like that, without public drama or royal speeches, a chapter closed. Not with noise, but with a silence so deep it echoed. So why was she subjected to such treatment? What was her offense? Let's delve into the details of the revelation that broke King Charles's heart. The folder that shattered a kingdom. On June 25, 2025, Buckingham Palace glowed in morning sunlight, its corridors humming with quiet, precise activity. King Charles sipped his comforting Earl Grey, savoring a fleeting sense of normalcy. But the ordinary shattered the moment his hand touched an unmarked, slim folder on his desk, seemingly innocuous, yet carrying a weight capable of upending his world, hinting at secrets that would soon ripple through the palace and beyond. He opened the folder. What he found inside made him freeze. 8 photographs, clear and unnervingly precise, stared back at him. They weren't the kind of pictures meant for tabloids, grainy and sensationalized. These were sharp, intimate, clinical, the kind of images that left no room for doubt. And they captured a moment he never thought he would witness. His wife, Queen Camilla, barefoot and laughing. A sound and a sight he had not expected to encounter in this way, in the arms of another man. The setting was a private, secluded Windsor estate, away from the eyes of the world. Yet somehow, the palace's own walls had betrayed him. The man holding her was Edward Langley, the very same Edward Langley who had served as Charles's equerry for 23 years. Someone he had trusted implicitly, someone who had been by his side through decades of royal obligations, ceremonies, and private confidences. And now, that trust lay in ruins, snapped by a single, devastating revelation. The woman in the photos, the Queen, was unrecognizable in the most human of ways. Her face radiated an unguarded joy, the kind of pure, unself-conscious happiness he had not seen in decades, perhaps not since their early days of marriage. It was laughter, unfiltered, carefree, and entirely devoted to someone who wasn't him. The sight pierced through him, cutting deeper than any words could. What made the discovery even more horrifying was its source. These weren't casual snapshots stolen from a hidden corner by a paparazzo. They were taken by the palace's own security team, evidence that someone inside the household had been watching, documenting, and waiting for just the right moment. Month after month, they had captured every intimate detail, every clandestine meeting, and now these 8 photographs were merely the opening act, a chilling prelude to whatever revelations were yet to come. Charles set the cup of tea down, its steam curling and twisting in the air like his spiraling thoughts. His mind raced, unwilling to linger too long on any one possibility, yet unable to resist piecing together the unbearable truth. How had this gone unnoticed for so long? Who else knew? How deep did the betrayal go? Questions piled upon questions, each one heavier than the last. The room around him seemed to shrink, the ornate grandeur of Buckingham Palace fading into a suffocating weight. Every framed portrait, every gilded fixture, every familiar shadow seemed suddenly tainted, as if the walls themselves had absorbed the betrayal. He could feel the pulse of history pressing in, the decades of public scrutiny and private expectation now colliding in one jagged, impossible moment. And yet, even in the midst of this personal upheaval, a darker, almost cinematic truth emerged. This was not merely a scandal waiting to break into headlines. This was a story of trust shattered from within, of loyalty turned traitorous, of a household where the watchers themselves were complicit in the betrayal. Charles realized, with a sinking dread, that what he held in his hands was only the beginning. The rest, the full story, the unseen hours, the unrecorded moments, was still out there, waiting to surface, and he was powerless to stop it. In that quiet, gilded room, with morning light streaming and shadows stretching across the polished floor, King Charles understood one immutable fact. Nothing, not the centuries of tradition, not the loyalty of the crown, not even the careful choreography of royal life, could prepare him for what he was about to confront. Did King Charles conclude based on what he saw? Did he investigate further? What other discoveries did King Charles come across? Let's find out. The vanished trunk and Diana's stolen legacy. The deeper the investigation went, the darker and more shocking the story became. On April 22nd, Camilla reportedly entered the royal vault alone, armed with a long deactivated emergency code that should have been unusable. She didn't just pop in and out. She lingered for 3 hours and 18 minutes, a window of time long enough for secrets to be lost or stolen. When she finally emerged, she wasn't empty-handed. Cradled in her arms was a small, antique leather trunk, compact enough to disappear into the boot of a Range Rover, yet heavy with history and value beyond measure. Inside that trunk lay treasures that had once belonged to Princess Diana, icons of a bygone era of royal glamour and personal memory. There were the priceless caterpillar earrings, a gift from Qatar, sparkling with a story of elegance and international admiration. There was also the Spencer family choker, a piece of jewelry steeped in family heritage, famously worn by Diana the night she danced with John Travolta at a glittering Hollywood gala. These were not mere ornaments. They were fragments of history, heirlooms intended for Princess Charlotte on her 18th birthday, a future gift that would connect the past to the next generation. And yet, after that April day, both pieces had vanished without a trace. 2 days later, the very same trunk resurfaced, found at a secluded residence near Windsor, known to the public only as a love nest. It lingered briefly before disappearing once more on April 23rd, and from that moment on, the treasures inside were gone forever, as if the royal history they carried had been swallowed by shadows. The timing of events delivered an almost cruel irony. Just 3 weeks before this shocking discovery, Camilla's daughter, Laura Lopes, had appeared on a red carpet, gracefully gliding before the cameras, the glitter of jewels catching every flash. She wore Diana's famous caterpillar earrings and casually told photographers they were a family loan. But in truth, the earrings were never meant to be lent out. They were not borrowed in any innocent sense. They had been taken. They had been stolen. The implications were chilling. The royal vault was supposed to be the safest place in the kingdom, protected by protocols, codes, and the weight of centuries of tradition. Yet here was proof that access alone didn't guarantee security. Someone had exploited old systems, bypassing safeguards thought to be long deactivated, and had walked away with priceless artifacts. The audacity of it alone was staggering, but the betrayal struck deeper. These were not just jewelry pieces. They were symbols of memory, lineage, and identity. To misappropriate them was to assault the very fabric of the royal story, erasing fragments of Diana's legacy meant to endure through her children. The sequence of events raised more questions than answers. How had the trunk been moved undetected? Why had it resurfaced so briefly near Windsor, only to vanish again? And why had those who had access to the vault, or to Diana's legacy, chosen deception over duty? Every detail, from the timing to the locations, painted a picture of meticulous planning, a careful orchestration that seemed to mock the rules meant to protect the monarchy's treasures. For those watching, the saga was more than a scandal. It was a narrative of loss, betrayal, and a haunting reminder of how fragile even the most secure institutions can be. It revealed an unsettling truth. Sometimes the real danger lies not in strangers, but in those closest to the power, the very people entrusted with legacy and trust. In the end, The disappearance of Diana's earrings and the Spencer choker became a symbol not only of theft, but of fractured loyalty. They were supposed to connect past and future, to link Princess Diana with Princess Charlotte, in a tangible gesture of family continuity. Instead, they had become a story of shadows, secrets, and a bold act of taking what should have remained untouchable. Those sparkling treasures, meant to shine on a milestone birthday, were lost to the world, leaving behind a void filled with unanswered questions and a scandal that would linger far longer than the glitter of any diamond could. The theft was more than material. It was a rupture of trust, a reminder that even in the hallowed halls of royalty, history can be rewritten and stolen by those who know its secrets best. Did Charles confront Camilla over his discovery? What was her reaction like? Let's dive into the details of the confrontation over Charles's discovery. The Blue Room, where a marriage died in silence. July 1st, 2025. In the Blue Room, Buckingham Palace. The doors clicked shut behind them, sealing the room in an almost suffocating hush. With a swift wave of his hand, Charles dismissed the staff. One by one, they left, their footsteps fading into the cavernous corridors of the palace, leaving only the two of them in the grand, cold stillness. The chandeliers above cast a pale light that reflected off the polished mahogany table, illuminating the sharp lines of the king's face and the tense set of Camilla's shoulders. Charles did not speak immediately. Instead, he placed the folders on the table with the deliberate precision of a prosecutor presenting irrefutable evidence. Each folder thumped softly against the polished wood, a metronome marking the gravity of the moment. Photos spilled across the surface, intimate, damning. Vault logs documented movements and access that could not be argued away. Text from Camilla's encrypted tablet blinked at him from the page. "I need something that is finally mine." Simple words, yet in this context, they were incendiary. At last he spoke, his voice low, almost a whisper, but it carried the weight of a storm. "Who is he?" Camilla's lips trembled as she tried to conjure the story she had rehearsed in her mind. A retreat, a business trip, a wellness escape. But the lie stalled mid-air. Her eyes flicked nervously to the evidence, to the proofs she could not undo. The missing trunk, the exquisite earrings now dangling from Laura's ears in the photographs. She felt her composure fracture. Her skin drained of color, leaving her the ghostly hue of candle wax. Even the chandeliers seemed to recoil from the pallor of her face. Charles did not rise, did not shout. He did not need to. His calm, deliberate demeanor was far more terrifying than anger could ever be. He let the evidence speak, and it screamed louder than any accusation could. "You didn't just betray me," he said, his words slow, measured, yet slicing through the air like a blade. "You reached into Diana's memory and tried to wear it like cheap costume jewelry. You desecrated the past to serve your own vanity." The silence that followed was almost suffocating. The air in the room seemed to thicken, pressing down on them both. Camilla's hands, usually so steady, clutched at the edge of the table. For a fleeting moment she looked as if she might crumble entirely, swallowed by the enormity of her actions and the weight of the man before her. Charles stood, finally, but still without raising his voice. There was no triumph in his posture, only an unshakable sovereign authority that left no room for negotiation or excuses. His eyes, steady and unyielding, tracked her every movement. He opened the door himself. The gesture was both final and ceremonious. Camilla walked through it, head held high, her dignity a fragile mask over the shame that threatened to swallow her. She left the room a queen, adorned in titles and history, but the threshold she crossed was a one-way street. Whatever power, prestige, or illusion of control she had clung to was now irrevocably stripped away. She would never return, not as the same person, not as a queen, not even as the woman who had once thought she could navigate and manipulate the corridors of power without consequence. The Blue Room would remain behind her as a monument to finality, a silent witness to the collapse of secrets, betrayals, and ambitions that had overreached their bounds. The door closed behind her with a soft but unmistakable click, echoing in the vast emptiness of Buckingham Palace. The sound was a punctuation mark on her reign, a reminder that some entrances are permanent, and some exits are irreversible. Charles returned to the table, to the remnants of proof scattered like shards of a life they could never reclaim. His expression remained unreadable, but his eyes betrayed a quiet, unspoken understanding. That trust, once shattered, leaves nothing in its wake but the hollow echoes of what was lost, and the resolute certainty that some doors, once opened or closed, can never be traversed again. And in that quiet aftermath, the Blue Room waited. Will Camilla's position remain vacant after her ban? Is there an available replacement? Let's take a look at the replacement after Camilla's ban. The vault sealed, the crown saved. Catherine's silent coronation. July 8th. Catherine's footsteps echoed softly along the cold, silent corridor. The walls were lined with centuries of history, yet she moved as if in a private world, accompanied only by the chief archivist. No guards, no cameras, no interruptions. Just the quiet hum of a place that had seen generations pass through its doors. They stopped at the vault. With meticulous care, they began their work, opening every drawer, examining every document, photographing each item for posterity, and replacing every lock with a new, unbreakable system. It was a ritual both precise and profoundly personal, a ritual that spoke of legacy, love, and the weight of choices that only a few could understand. Among the official work, Catherine paused with her own small act of intimacy. She held a crisp white envelope and wrote in her neat, careful hand, "For Charlotte, on your 18th birthday. All my love forever, Mama." She slid the envelope into the drawer, a secret treasure hidden among the vault's treasures. Then she pressed the biometric lock, listening to the soft click that sealed it away. Only 2 fingerprints in the world could ever open it now. Hers, and someday, Charlotte's. A small gesture, perhaps, yet monumental in meaning. A bridge across time, connecting mother and daughter in a way no one else could touch. 5 days later, the grandeur of Windsor faded behind them. Catherine and Charlotte slipped quietly into a tiny Oxford library, dressed simply in cotton dresses, with no jewelry, no staff, no entourage. Just mother and daughter blending into the world of children who struggled to find their way with words. There were no cameras. There was no fanfare. Yet the moment, simple as it was, carried power. Catherine knelt beside a small boy, guiding him as he sounded out his very first full sentence. His triumph, so pure and unpolished, was captured in a short phone video that would soon travel further than any royal announcement ever could. Within days, it had been seen by 52 million people. The caption seemed to write itself. "This is what the crown looks like now." It was a crown not of gold and jewels, but of care, patience, and quiet influence. A crown measured in love, in attention, in the slow building of confidence in the youngest hearts. Back in Wiltshire, life moved differently. At Ray Mill House, the curtains remained drawn. Inside, a woman who once waved to millions from the Buckingham Palace balcony on the day of coronation now watched the world from behind glass, from a place of private reflection. Time had moved on, and history, with its relentless pace, had already written its lines. One queen had reached too far and fallen, her story marked by ambition and loss. Another queen, in contrast, never reached outward in the same way. She didn't need to. She became inevitable, not by force, not by spectacle, but through the quiet, almost invisible ways she shaped the world around her. In these acts, both grand and minute, the real power of royalty was revealed. In one vault, a mother left a message for her child, a legacy in handwriting and sealed in steel. In a small library, the same mother knelt beside children who struggled with words, showing the world that influence was not only ceremonial, but profoundly human. And as the sun set over Wiltshire and the halls of Ray Mill House held their silence, one truth lingered. History may remember the mistakes, the ambitions, and the falls, but it also remembers the quiet inevitability of those who simply live their purpose, who nurture, guide, and endure. One queen's story ended in heartbreak and headlines. Another's unfolded quietly, invisibly, yet indelibly. The world may have watched one reach too far, but the other, she had already reached everything that truly mattered. What could have led Camilla to cheat? Could her cheating behavior be an indicator of a heartbreak experienced earlier in life? Let's find out. Before the crown, Camilla's hidden years. Most people familiar with the British royal family immediately associate Camilla, Duchess of Cornwall, with one of the most talked-about love triangles in modern history. Her relationship with Prince Charles and the late Princess Diana. Yet, while the headlines often focused on her connection to Charles, Tina Brown's recent book, The Palace Papers, takes readers deeper, revealing a side of Camilla few have seen, her life long before she stepped foot into the royal spotlight. Camilla's early adult life was far from a fairy tale. She married Andrew Parker Bowles, a charismatic and socially prominent figure, knowing full well that he had a penchant for other women. Brown's research paints a stark picture of a marriage shadowed by nearly 22 years of infidelity. Camilla, it seems, was never blind to her husband's wandering eye. She always knew Andrew's weakness for other women, Brown notes, emphasizing that Camilla entered the marriage with open eyes, fully aware of the challenges she would face. Anecdotes from friends and contemporaries illustrate just how tense this reality could be. Lady Caroline Percy recounts, in an excerpt obtained by She Knows, that at social gatherings, Camilla would confront her about spending time with Andrew. When I was with Andrew, she would come up to me at parties and ask what I was doing with her boyfriend. She was always doing this to girls at parties, Percy recalls. Her patience eventually ran out, leading to a bold, cheeky retort, "You can have him back when I've finished with him." Such moments revealed the tension and drama that surrounded Camilla, highlighting a persistent undercurrent of suspicion and insecurity in her marriage. Indeed, Camilla's experiences bred a constant wariness. Brown explains that even after starting a family and giving birth to her son Tom and daughter Laura, Camilla rarely knew her husband's whereabouts or his company during the week. Andrew's predilections took him across London, often in the company of his brother-in-law Nicholas Paravicini, to pursue women and return with them to their shared flat. The book suggests that Camilla's marriage never enjoyed a period untouched by betrayal, leaving her to navigate the emotional strain of a relationship defined by deceit. These personal trials shaped her perspective on love, loyalty, and the consequences of infidelity. When Camilla became involved with Prince Charles, the media frenzy was almost inevitable, given the backdrop of her history with Andrew and Charles's previous marriage to Diana. Headlines chronicled the affair for years, scrutinizing her every action, while public opinion remained sharply divided. Some admired Camilla's steadfastness and dedication to her royal duties once she officially joined the royal family, seeing her as a figure of resilience and service. Others, however, could not forget how her choices intersected painfully with the life of Princess Diana, the people's princess, whose personal suffering became emblematic of the pressures surrounding the monarchy. Brown's account goes beyond tabloid sensationalism, offering a nuanced portrait of a woman who has lived through complex emotional landscapes. Camilla emerges not merely as a royal figure entwined in scandal, but as someone who has endured betrayal, navigated personal heartbreak, and ultimately learned the heavy lessons that come with love, loyalty, and public scrutiny. Understanding her early life, the marriages, the infidelities, the constant vigilance, allows a more complete picture of the Duchess, a woman shaped as much by personal trials as by royal obligations. In the end, Camilla's story is one of resilience, of navigating life under extraordinary pressure, and of a journey that has always been more layered than the public has seen. From a young woman confronting infidelity in her first marriage to the woman who would eventually become Duchess of Cornwall, her life reveals the complexities of love, loyalty, and the human heart, all under the unforgiving gaze of history and the media. So, do you think it suffices to get Camilla banned and stripped of her titles? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.